A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shin. I'm from the Singapore Economic Development Board. So the Singapore EDB is the lead economic agency that is in charge of developing Singapore's economy, coming up with the strategy, implementing the strategy, working with companies on projects in Singapore. So before I start, I just wanted to ask the audience here, any one of you been to Singapore? Okay, not too bad. So Singapore is a small country with big dreams and a determined plan. So this is what Singapore is about. What I'm going to share with you today is our perspectives of urban mobility, how we see the future, and what are some of the things that we are doing to realize this vision. So my presentation today will be structured three ways. First, on our context, because the context is important in explaining why we do some of the things and how we see the future. Then I'll talk a little bit about our present, what are some of the things we are doing with companies in Singapore. And then finally, I'll talk a bit about our future. What are we doing to realize that future with companies? And ultimately, I think what we are trying to do here is to improve the lives of Singaporeans, create better jobs, improve the economy, and out of which, when you are successful, you can work with companies to bring solutions at the city level and export it to other cities around the world. So the context, when you look at Singapore, we are really a city and a country, just 5.6 million people, slightly more than Berlin, but we are smaller than Berlin, just 710 square kilometers. So I think this is where we have limited people. You have got lesser and lesser, the young, they don't want to be drivers, for example. So you have issues because with an educated workforce, less people want to do the less interesting jobs like driving. So how do we improve those jobs, create better jobs for Singaporeans? But also, if you look at the land, how we allocate land, 12% of our roads in Singapore is for roads, and 14% is for housing, among all the different competing users in industry, military, commercial, recreation. So it's really about building a city where you need it to be fun, exciting for everyone, but at the same time, you have got land for roads, for highways, 12%. That is quite a lot for a small city-state. So I'll just share with you what are some of the things we are doing in Singapore today to improve mobility. So as many of you might know, owning a car in Singapore is not cheap. So the certificate of entitlement, the certificate to own a car is sometimes more expensive than the car itself. And that's because we set a quota on car ownership. But the second thing we do in Singapore is we have electronic road pricing. So when you pass through a gantry, you pay money. But the way we need to move in future is one where we are introducing electronic road pricing. This is a mixture of GPS technology and beacons. Beacons because in certain areas in high-rise building, you have got canyon effect, so you need beacons. And we are introducing it to improve congestion. So the moment you use the car in congested zones, you are charged, and you are charged by your usage, not by the number of times you enter. So that hopefully improves congestion. But the second use case in electronic road pricing that we see is that you don't need to have parking stations coupons. So if you park your car on roadside parking in car parks, you're automatically charged. And it makes it convenient, and it makes it seamless. Second case study I wanted to show, this is the hype today. Everyone is doing autonomous vehicles. But for Singapore, we are looking at a very specific use case for autonomous vehicles. It's on first mile, last mile driverless car. So you will see that Singapore was the first city in the world to introduce a robo-taxi. And that's about connecting the first mile and last mile to our train stations. So Newtonomy is in Singapore testing, Delphi is in Singapore testing their vehicles, and we are seeing a healthy slate of projects. The third case study I wanted to show here is on truck platooning. As compared to the United States or Europe, the way we look at truck platooning is very different because there's only one city. You don't need long-distance trucking technology. But we are looking at it from the perspective of how we can shift load to the night. Because if we can shift trucks movement to the night, it frees up the land, the roads, so you don't have to build more roads. You simply move them to the night. And and once you automate it, you don't need truck drivers. So there's actually a very clear business case for Singapore to introduce truck platooning technology. And we are doing this today with Scania and Toyota Tsusho. Last case study here, Airbus, SingPost, working on drones, parcel delivery. The regulator has set aside air corridors for them to work with the National University of Singapore and the port to move goods. So some of the things that we are doing today, I want to talk a little bit about the future because that is what is exciting, and that's what Singapore and Singaporeans are determined to do. We have a challenge statement for the industry, and the way we are trying to do this is how do we achieve the highest possible public, shared, and active transport mode share without increasing land, without increasing manpower. And we want to move freight in the most resource-efficient manner. So there are three key thrusts here. How do we reduce demand for personal vehicle usage? We call it, how do we have a car-light or carless society? But it doesn't mean you don't need vehicles. You still need vehicles. You still need your shuttles for first mile, last mile, for passenger transport. You still need trucks. But how do we reduce demand for a personal vehicle? How do we reduce demand volatility so that you don't only use road in one specific time of the day, you spread that demand throughout the day? And then how do we improve resource efficiency, which is about land and manpower? So being typically Singaporeans, we have set up a number of some indicators and numbers to measure ourselves to see how we do it. And the whole idea is how do you make public transport so appealing, so good, and so convenient that people would not want to own a car. And that is what it is about. I won't go into the details of it. The next slide I wanted to quickly talk about here is about urban logistics. If you look at Singapore today, we have some of the busiest airport, 65 million passengers today. By 20, we are increasing it, doubling it to 130 million passengers per year. So you have to increase the manpower to deal with all these logistics goods. Similar for our port, but we cannot keep increasing the number of, for example, drivers or for some of those jobs where it's manual labor. So we need automation. We need to find new ways to shift these goods efficiently. So now you take a step back and you put everything together and you think about what Singapore could be in the future. And this is our vision of what the future of Singapore can be. From a passenger perspective, it would be intermodal. It would be, if you look at it, you could actually free up land and take away the roads, put greenery, put parks, put alfresco dining, improve the quality of life. You shift the transport, public transport, downwards for autonomous vehicles, robo-taxis, for example, to underground, so it's interplanar. You can move goods in the air or you move passengers in the air through the drones. And I think you look at the last level here, you see the trains, which will be the backbone of a city. You will still need the trains, but we connect it with first mile, last mile, with autonomous vehicle. And what happens at night when the people sleep? What you have here is you have your trucks moving underground, and you still have some of the drones maybe moving the e-commerce for first mile, last mile delivery. So this is really how Singapore looks at bringing together different technologies. But frankly, from our experience so far with the technologies, it's not just about the technologies, it's about the business models, it's about how you implement it in specific use cases, finding the right use cases and application to make it work. And actually, that is what Singapore EDB is doing. We are working with companies like yourself to actually find a way to put in your solutions and to test bid in Singapore, because if it works, then you can export it to other cities around the world, because we are living in a time where cities will in the future be very important, where you have mega cities growing. And we are trying to find good solutions, good technologies, good business models to actually put it in place. And with that, thank you very much for your kind attention. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.